Hey everybody, welcome back to video number 3. In video number 3 we're going to briefly cover the assets page. There's not too much to go over. The assets page just holds your videos, your images, anything that pertains to that. For the example, we're going to use a Rickroll PNG because if I can shoehorn a Rickroll in, I am going to. So first things first, we're going to go into the project folder and we're going to create another folder called images. So the caveat behind this is every time you're in QtDesign Studio and you go to import an asset, if you don't have a folder named images, it's going to defaultly create one. Um, so yeah, if you had like a capital I images, it's still going to create a lower images. It seems to just require that. And it's kind of weird. Anyways, we're going to go into images and we're going to create another folder in here called icons. And really, you can have as many different categories in here as you wanted. Like if you wanted a misc, and then I don't know if you wanted PNG or a JPEG one, however you want to organize that. This is just where your assets page, or just where your images are going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and launch QtDesign Studio and open up that project. Okay, so now that we have QtDesign Studio launched, as you can see in the assets page, it's going to show empty, and it's not going to show anything until you actually import something. So we're just going to go into the desktop and import that Rickroll PNG. From here, you can choose what file you want. We're going to probably want it in icons, although it's not really an icon, but we'll put it in there for now. And as you can see, it's showing everything. So the downside of not using the content folder that we originally got rid of is it seems to show every single folder within the project directory. Whereas if you actually used images within the content folder, it seems to know the difference and it would filter everything else out. But I like this layout better, and I choose just to ignore these things. Although having fonts here is kind of nice. So you can see the Rickroll PNG is now draggable and droppable. Okay, now that we're back in this folder, there is one other optional way you can name these, and I just put it in just for the sake of an example. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it, although it is something I do personally use because I'm a little stubborn and I want it at the top and I want it named and kind of separated off from everything else because I do have to see them all. So I'm going to show you what I do here. Um, so for images and fonts, I do if you do Alt 10, you get this square, and then I follow it up with a bunch of spaces. Like if I come into fonts, I can rename this, and then I got a square there with a bunch of spaces, and then I'll do fonts. As you can see, that stays at the top. Well, I guess that was already at the top, but the image will keep it at the top, or the symbol. And we're gonna do that on images as well. Let's refresh this. There we go. And then lastly, I like to do a borderline separation folder. This folder is like only for uh, visibility. Now it kind of looks like that. There's one other thing you can do, and you can come in and we can rename icons. We're gonna get rid of misc just for this example, but we can come into icons and we can rename it to something like this. Now this looks kind of weird from the folder, but if we go into QtDesign Studio, so now as you can see, our images and fonts is now at the top, and we have kind of a border separating this in the assets page. And when we go into images, we can kind of see icons is a little bit better presented. And this is how I prefer to work with it. And I just kind of deal with the fact that when you need to access these folders, it's kind of a pain. What I do like about this though is when you have a bunch of images and a bunch of fonts and a bunch of audio files and you just have a ton of assets, doing something like this gets the readability is very helpful. So I do like to usually keep to this format. One caveat though, speaking of having a ton of assets, um, I was using like thousands of images to create a video because I couldn't, if you use the MP3 player within the QMedia, it doesn't actually support alpha channel. So my workaround for that was to use an animated sequence that ran through PNGs, so I can actually get that alpha channel. The problem is if I actually put that in assets to where QtDesign Studio could see that, you would sit and have to load all those images. So it got to a point where I had like 20 gigs or so. I wasn't doing things very efficiently, but I had like 20 gigs or so worth of animation sequences, and when it went to load all those images, which was probably, I don't know, close to 50,000 images, it just sat there and crashed. And I chalked that up as it's unusable until I kind of started figuring things out more. So that is one warning. Okay, for the most part, I think that's all I have to cover in assets. This was going to be quite brief. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for staying. And I'll see you on video 4. Video 4 might be a couple episodes. We're going to cover components and just setting up components. Yeah, thank you.